Hari Om.
Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishava.
Very low, volume has become very low. But we'll continue, while you fix that, let's continue.
Should I start?
Shri Gita Dhyanam. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshini Bhagavati Ashtadashadhyayini Ambatvāmanusandadhāmi Bhagavad Gīte Bhavadveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Ullaravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipa Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaya Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gītāmritaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dobda Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsat-Sudhir Bhukta Dugdam Gītāmritam Mahat Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsa-Chanūramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishmadronatata Jayadbhratajala Gandharanilotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashvathama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sutirna Khalu Pandavai Rananadi Kaivartaka Keshavaha Parasharya Vachas Sarojamamalam Gītārtha-kandotkatam Nānākhyānaka Kesaram Harikatha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana
Shatpariraha Pīpīyamanam mudha Bharatapam Kalimala Pradvamsinashriyase Mukam karoti vachalam Pangum langayati girim Yatrapatamaham bhante Paramananda madhavam Yam brahma varunindra rudra marutaha Sunvanti vidyaistavai Vedesa sabadakramu panishade Gayanti yam samaga Dhyanavastita tadgatina manasa Pashyanti yam yoginu Yasyantam na vidussurasuragana Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha.
Yeah, it was fine now. So the followers of the Karma Kanda, or the ritualistic portion of the Vedas, they worship me through prescribed sacrifices and attain the heavens. And after having enjoyed the heavens for a period of time, for a long, long period of time, after the exhaustion of their punya, merit, they return to samsara, gata gatam. And when the mind of the bhakta is totally in me, I take responsibility for ensuring their prosperity and welfare. Yoga kshemam vahamyaham. Yoga, gaining what is not already there. Kshema, protecting what is already there in our possession. Apraptasya praptihi is yoga. Praptyasya rakshanam is kshema. The access to such a Lord then must be really difficult. You know, somebody who can do this. What all must a devotee do to get this kind of a security and protection from Bhagavan? Bhagavan himself clarifies in the 26th verse.
Patram pushpam phalam toyam.
Patram pushpam phalam toyam.
Yo me bhaktya prayachati.
Yo me bhaktya prayachati.
Tadaham bhaktyupahritam.
Tadaham bhaktyuprahritam.
Ashnami prayatatmanaha.
Ashnami prayatatmanaha.
Patram pushpam phalam toyam. Yo me bhaktya prayachati. Tadaham bhaktyupahritam. Ashnami prayatatmanaha.
Yo me prayachati. Yo prayachati. Yo, whoever, prayachati offers me to me. And what? With devotion, bhaktya. That is very, very important in this satsang also. Of course, in this entire chapter, this keeps coming back again and again. With bhaktya. See, sometimes we think that, okay, after 70 years, I'll follow the spiritual path. But with bhaktya, to get that level of bhakti takes time. It's not that easy. So, whoever offers to me with bhakti, with devotion, what? Patram, a leaf. Phalam, a fruit. Pushpam, a flower. Toyam, water. Actually, Bhagavan says first flower, then fruit. But that doesn't matter. Anything, whoever, whatever. That, tadaham, that I accept. Ashnami, accept. Bhaktyupahritam. Bhaktyupahritam, whatever is offered with devotion. Prayatat manaha, by the pure-minded. So whoever offers me with devotion, a leaf, a flower, a fruit, water, that I expect, offered by the pure-minded with devotion. Bhagavan brings bhaktya twice here. The aspect of devotion twice in just one verse. He brings it twice. Not at offering, who is offering, what is being offered. That is not Bhagavan's primary focus. His primary focus is the bhakti with which it is offered. And we have seen this a few times through some beautiful stories, right? When Sudama went and visited Krishna, he took some dry beaten rice. And Krishna literally snatched it out of his hands and devoured it. Happily, merrily devoured it. When Sabri offered dried up fruits to Rama, dried up fruits, not dry fruits, not kishmish, badam, pista and all, dried up fruit. That when he offered to Rama, Rama very affectionately, very happily, graciously took that and very happily consumed it. And when Krishna went as the emissary to Hastinapura, Vidura hosted him, or rather Krishna declared that I am going to stay in Vidura's cottage. I don't want to stay in the Hastinapura palace. That has been specially built for me. Like Duryodhana said, I built a special palace for you with ulterior motives. But Krishna said, I will go and stay in the cottage of Vidura. And Vidura was taken aback. He was overwhelmed. He was absolutely ecstatic and also overwhelmed. So he didn't know what was going on. When Krishna entered his home, first he made Krishna sit down on the floor and he himself sat on a stool. And then there was bananas. There was nothing much else. There were a few bananas. So he peeled the bananas, put the fruit aside and gave the peel to Lord Krishna. And Krishna happily ate up the banana peels. So whatever gives, but all of these, if you see, extreme bhakti. Whoever, whatever gives, but with this bhakti, that I take. Bhagavan uses the term when he says I take, he says Ashnami. Ashnami, the literal meaning of Ashnami is I eat. The implication here is that Bhagavan accepts whatever is given to him with devotion. And whatever actually he doesn't eat, meaning it doesn't get over. Even in the temples and all that, when we go and make an offering, it goes to him and comes back to us. Whatever we offer him comes back to us, sometimes in multifold. And whatever we offer to him is his anyway. Tera tujhko arpan, kya lage mera. So what should a devotee do then? That we'll see in the next verse.
Tat karoshi yadashnasi.
Yat karoshi yadasnasi.
Yajjuhoshi dadasi yat.
Yajjuhoshi dadasi yat.
Yat tapasyasi kaunteya.
Yat tapasyasi kaunteya.
Tat kurushva madarpanam.
Tat kurushva madarpanam.
Yat karoshi yadashnasi. Yajjuhoshi dadasi yat. Yat tapasyasi kaunteya. Yat kurushva madarpanam.
Another beautiful verse of the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavan uses yat 5 times in this verse. But we can take yat infinite times. And then follows that 5 times or infinite times of yat with one tat. Yat is whatever, tat is that. So infinite whatever, followed up with one that. What does he say? Yat karoshi, whatever you do. Don't change anything that you are doing. Whatever you may be doing, do as you please. That whatever you do. Yadash nasi, whatever you eat. That energy fuel that we must have every 4 to 6 hours. Whatever it may be. Whatever we eat. Yajju hoshi, whatever you offer in sacrifice. Whenever anything is done with that yajna spirit of offering, that whatever. Dadasi yat, whatever you give in charity. Whatever donations and charity that we indulge in. Yat tapasyasi, whatever austerities that you practice. Whatever spiritual discipline that you practice. And then Bhagavan says, Tat kurushva madarpanam. That you do as an offering to me. Tat kurushva, that you do as an offering to me. Beautiful verse. So there is no need to dedicate anything to Bhagavan. There is no need to dedicate any time to Bhagavan. Because if we dedicate a thing to Bhagavan or a time to Bhagavan, then everything else which is not dedicated to him, every time else that is not dedicated to him, we assume freedom to do as we please. So today I went and prayed in the morning in my mandir. Now I can do all kinds of crime the entire day. That's not devotion. So no need to dedicate. So reserving Tuesdays, Saturdays, Sundays, we have all these customs. Some of these customs are well-intentioned so as to ensure that at least we remember him sometime. But no, unless these customs help us to get to a discipline of remembering him all the times or doing whatever we are doing as an offering to him, then those customs are of no use. The customs are of use if they are used as a stepping stone to this ultimate goal, to this goal of devotion, to this goal of the method of offering bhakti. If we are not using that as a stepping stone, there's no point in doing it at all. We might as well leave it. So no need to dedicate. He is just saying, he is not asking us to dedicate or any time. He is just saying, whatever you do it as an offering to me. And earlier, if you remember, he has also said that when you do whatever you do thinking about me, how will you incur sin? How will you do something that you yourself feel is wrong? If you are doing something as an offering to me and you feel it is right, you will continue doing it. If you are doing something as an offering to me and you feel it is wrong, you will stop it and do something else which you feel it is right. So the point here is how Bhagavan is guiding us to think about him all the time so that we will do what is correct. What is appealing as correct to us only, by the way. This actually will be the sadhana for this chapter. Yat karoshi, whatever you do, tat kurushva madarpanam. Do it that as an offering to me. The panacea of all evils, the solution of all evils of earthly life is presented in this verse. Like I just said, because it will help us do the right things in life if we keep Bhagavan in our mind. To change the secular to the sacred is the only way a human being can progress spiritually and actually evolve into the Mahatma that Bhagavan talks about, where the divinity within surfaces. Moving away from self-seeking, selfish attitudes, self-fulfilling actions, and those kind of indulgences, to acting purely for the glory of the Lord. That uncovers the divinity within each one of us. Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda said, and I quote, when all activities are performed in the spirit of offering, not only would our love for the Supreme increase, but our entire life becomes sanctified with a noble purpose and a diviner aim. Unquote. Whatever you do, that you do as an offering to me. Yat karoshi, tat kurushva madarpana. Thus, when we change the orientation of life from the ego to the Lord, from ahankara to Bhagavan, then he does everything for us. That Bhagavan says in the next verse.
Shubha Shubha Falairevam
Shubha Shubha Falairevam
Mokshase Karma Bandhanaihi
Mokshase Karma Bandhanaihi
Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma
Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma
Vimukto Mamupaishyasi
Vimukto Mamupaishyasi
Shubha Shubha Falairevam Mokshase Karma Bandhanaihi Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma Vimukto Mamupaishyasi.
Evam Mokshase, Evam thus Mokshase, you shall be liberated. From what? Karma bandhanaihi, from the bonds of actions, which falaihi, yield fruits. Shubha, Ashubha. Fruits that are good and fruits that are evil. Fruits that are auspicious and fruits that are inauspicious. Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma, with the mind steadfast in the yoga of renunciation. With that yajna spirit. Not a selfish, self-seeking, self-fulfilling mind. Mind steadfast in the yoga of renunciation. Vimukto, vimuktaha, vimuktaha, liberated. Upaishyasi, you shall come, mom, to me. Thus, you shall be liberated from the bonds of action that yield good and evil fruits. And with a mind that is steadfast in the yoga of renunciation, you shall be liberated and you will come to me. The good and the bad results of karma are the very bondage, are the very things that chain us and take us through the cycle of birth and death, through that Gatagatam that we read about earlier. But when they are all offered, when all this karma is offered to the Lord, they become as ineffective as seeds that are burnt up. Seeds that are burnt up cannot sprout. Similarly, the karma, when is offered to the Lord, does not get accumulated into sanchita, prarabdha and all that. The yogi is thus freed from bondage. Such a person, what has that person done? Has let go of selfishness. And this is what renunciation, sannyasi. So a person who has let go of selfishness becomes a sannyasi. And when this sannyasi's mind becomes steadfast in that renunciation, then gets well established in that sannyas. Earlier, the person was engaged in action, but with the goal to fulfill selfish objectives, selfish desires, kama. Now also work is being done, still engaged in actions, but with the vigor for the sake of the Lord, with that vigor, not with a vigor to fulfill your own desires. And this, in this manner, it is yoga. Sannyasa, it becomes because you let go of the selfishness. And the vigor with which you perform the action for the Lord makes it yoga. And this is nothing but what we have seen multiple times earlier, Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. Thus Karma Yoga. But here, yoga of renunciation, Sannyasa Yoga. Our lives are filled with actions that bind us to samsara. And these result in our own actions, result in good, which makes us happy. Actually, makes us happy is a wrong term, gives us joy because it is only transient. So our own actions, good result, joy. Our own actions, bad results or evil fruits, unhappy, sadness, moha, all of that. Now, these are not always planned, by the way. So we don't have to blame ourselves for everything. These could be planned or unplanned. Mostly they are unplanned. Mostly they are as a response to external stimuli. Things happen in our world, in our surroundings, and we react to those happenings. And a lot of these reactions are because of our nature. Our nature is because of our karma earlier. So one of the first things we should learn is to stop blaming ourselves when we feel that we have done something wrong. So our such unplanned and planned actions, but we should know, we should realize, we should have this knowledge that these unplanned and planned actions now also are accumulating as karma. And how do we ensure an overall positive progress in life given such realities of our existence? We can't wish away these realities. Given these realities, how do we progress? So let's just take a few minutes for a nice story. A young and successful executive driving home in a brand new car, spanking new car, expensive car. He was extremely fascinated by the vehicle, wowed by the features, loving it, enjoying the drive, deep into, what the car is offering him and fulfilling all those desires that he had, enjoying those fruits, feeling joyful about it. Suddenly, a brick smashes into the door of the car. And this guy is jolted out of his, joyful mood. He slams the brakes and reverses the car to the spot where it was hit. Looks to the side and he sees a small boy. And he notices that this boy is the one who has thrown that brick to the car. He becomes extremely angry. Gets out of the car, runs to that boy, grabs hold of him and pushes him into another parked car which is nearby. Slams him against that car and screams at him, how dare you do this? How can you do such a thing to me? Do you know how expensive my car is? Do you know what it's going to cost me now? Where are your parents? What kind of an impudent child are you? And he's yelling and screaming. And the boy is now absolutely trembling with fear and crying. And the boy says, as this guy pauses, the boy says, "Mister, please, sir." And then he points to the road and he says, that is my brother. He rolled off the curb and fell off his wheelchair, and he is lying down on the road, and it's very dangerous. And I'm not able to lift him and put him back. He's too heavy for me. Can you please help me? I didn't know what else to do because I'm trying to get help. There is nobody here. Immediately, there is a change in nature of this person, the driver. Moved beyond words, quietly goes, picks up that boy, puts him in the wheelchair, says, thank God he is not injured or badly injured, just a few minor bruises. And then he looks up in the heavens and says, thank you, Lord, for your small mercies. And the child is telling him, thank you so much, sir. You saved my brother today. And this man quietly watches, the brother pushing his brother on the wheelchair, handicapped brother, towards his home, and then returns. A long, quiet, slow walk to the car. The walk back to the car is really quiet and long. He can see the door and the damage is really bad, but it doesn't affect him at all. He doesn't pay heed to it at all. All he can feel is there's some kind of this weird, strange, grateful feeling in his heart. So God is always whispering in our hearts. Sometimes we don't have the time or we don't pay the attention to listen to him. And sometimes in life, he has to throw a brick at us. Two questions come up at this time. The first one is, now we have to offer our actions to God, right? Should I offer my actions to God before committing that action or after committing that action? How do I ensure that I remember to offer my action to God? I mean, my life is going at, remember we talked the other day also, I'm spinning like a top. And I'm spinning like a top, how do I offer that action to God? How do I remember? These are the two questions that come up. The answer is very simple. Dedicate yourself to Bhagavan. Dedicate yourself, dedicate ourselves to God. Then all the actions that we perform automatically get offered to him, are offered to him. This is very simple actually, because we all have a sense of identification, a sense of belonging, don't we? All of us do. I belong to this family. I belong to this community. I belong to this organization. I belong to this country. Let us first belong to God. It is as simple as that. Somehow in all these identifications of family, community, country, organization, work, we have forgotten to belong to God. If we can belong to Bhagavan, our actions will automatically get offered to him. Yat karoshi, tat kurushva madarpanam. Now, Bhagavan has said how bhakti towards him brings liberation to devotees. So does this imply that he is partial? We saw this earlier also. Is he partial to devotees? Don't all human beings come under his purview? That he talks about in the next verse.
Samoham sarva bhuteshu.
Samoham sarva bhuteshu.
Na me dveshyosti na priyaha.
Na me dveshyosti na priyaha.
Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya.
Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya.
Maite teshu chapyaham.
Maite teshu chapyaham.
Samoham sarva bhuteshu. Na me dveshyosti na priyaha. Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya. Maite teshu chapyaham.
So Bhagavan says Samoham. Samoham, the same am I. Sarva bhuteshu, to all beings. Name, none to me. Dveshyosti na priyaha, is hateful or is dear. I am the same to everyone, to all beings. None is to me hateful, none is to me loving or dear. Na dveshyaha asti. No one is hateful. I don't feel hate towards anyone. Na priyaha asti. I don't feel dear towards anyone. As Satchitananda, I am present equally in all. But then Bhagavan, you only said that the bhaktas get liberated and the abhaktas keep coming back gata gatam to samsara. Now you are saying you are equal. What does that mean? He answers that in the next verse. But, so Bhagavan says, but to ye, those who bhajanti mam, worship me, bhaktya, with devotion, worship me with devotion. Very, very, very critical. Not just worship me for the sake of worshipping, with devotion. Maite chapyaham teshu. They are in me. Maite, they are in me. Cha apyaham teshu. Cha, and I am also in them. So the minds of the bhaktas, that mind who is worshipping with devotion, which is worshipping with devotion, that becomes crystal clear, that becomes pure, that becomes noble, it becomes sattvic. Through what? Through chitta shuddhi, chitta ekagrata. So it is chitta ekagrata, single pointed devotion towards God, brings chitta shuddhi. Chitta shuddhi, the disturbances get washed away. The sins in the mind, the disturbances in the mind get washed away. Sin is nothing but that disturbance in the mind. And that disturbance in the mind which accumulates at karma is taken forward as sin again. So fundamentally, the root of sin is a disturbed mind. And in them, because they become pure, I become available. How does he become available? Simply because other minds are so embroiled in other matters that they do not connect with this purer form of the mind in which Bhagavan is. Those minds are, the Shantim is not there. In that car example, some people would have thrashed that boy, would not even have listened and paid heed. He would not have even realized that there's another kid, handicapped kid lying on the road. धूम धमा पीट के उसको अच्छी तरह से bruise करके चले जाते. Or maybe even got his parents and beaten the parents also. And would have gone. So those minds are not. This guy, even though initially he was agitated, initially because of his intrinsic nature, he actually manhandled the child. But immediately the presence of Bhagavan was obvious and his attitude changed. It's a fantastic example actually, how a person's behavior can change when God is there in the mind, and how a person's behavior is when God is not there in the mind. So that's what Bhagavan says. I am there in everyone. It is up to that mind whether that mind is there in me or not. The sunlight falls equally on all the things on the planet, all the good, the bad, the ugly. But then its effect and utilization depends on the nature of what it falls on top of. A mirror or a beautiful crystal clear lake, that the quality of that lake or the quality of the mirror is such that it reflects the sunlight or actually the sun itself as it is. But a solid reflective material will not reflect. Similarly, though the all-pervading Lord is there in every heart, his presence is easily recognizable only in the pure hearts of a devotee. Bhakti is the capacity that brings Bhagavan in. Bhagavan is already in. Bhakti is the capacity that brings Bhagavan out. Okay, in, out, whichever way. Bhagavan is in, Bhagavan is out also. Bhakti is the capacity that helps us realize Bhagavan, within and without. Bhagavan now presents the glory of Bhakti. We'll read verses 30 and 31 together.
Api chet suduracharah
Api chet suduracharah
bhajante mam ananya bhak
bhajate mam ananya bhak
sadhureva samantavyah
sadhureva samantavyah
samyak vyavastito hi saha
samyak vyavasito hi saha.
क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा
क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा
शश्वचान्तिं निगच्छति
शश्वचान्तिं निगच्छति
कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि
कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि
न मे भक्त प्रणश्यति
न मे भक्त प्रणश्यति
अपि चेत् सुदुराचारः भजते माम् अनन्यभाक् साधुरेव समन्तव्यः सम्यक् व्यवस्थितो हि सः क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा शश्वशान्तिं निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि न मे भक्त प्रणश्यति
अपि चेत्, even if Suduracharaha, a wicked person. Acharaha is conduct. Durachara is bad or evil conduct. Suduracharaha is the best among the people who have evil conduct. Because those who have only evil conduct will not worship. So to worship, you have to be the best among them. So the best among Suduracharaha, bhajate mam. Bhajate mam worships me. Ananya bhak, without distraction. Single pointed devotion. With devotion to nothing else. With thought in nothing else. Sa, this person, saha, mantavyaha, should be regarded, sadhureva, as righteous, as a sadhu, eva surely, should surely be regarded as a sadhu, as a righteous person. And why is that? Because this person has become rightly resolved. Samyak vyavasito. Surely this person, saha, samyak vyavasito, has become rightly resolved. Whatever the earlier issues were, the person has resolved them and has started worshipping me and has started focusing on Bhagwan within. Whatever be the past, in the present, the person is Ananya Bhak. And because the person is Ananya Bhak in the present, the person is transformed and thus is a sadhu. Now, we must remember this. You can't just, like I said earlier, this is what I was, I think, alluding to when I mentioned that. Bhakti takes time. It's a seed that grows within. Maybe some people, because of our previous lives, all our karma and all that, it can come in a flash. But we can't just assume that it's okay, let's wait. After 70, after 80, I'll figure it out. There's a lot of time in life for me to become spiritual. We don't even say to develop bhakti nowadays. Nowadays, it's only, even I understood Bhagavad Gita thanks to English. That's how, thanks to Swami Chinmayananda, because he presented it in such a format that all of us can understand. So we say, I have all the time in my life to become spiritual. There's no hurry. The sooner we develop bhakti in our hearts, the better for us. So this person is Ananya Bhak, without focusing on anything else, single pointed devotion. And Bhagavan says, such a person is Sadhureva, is a righteous person, because he has resolved the other issues. One beauty of Sanatana Dharma is that there is no such thing as eternal damnation for a sinner. That's the beauty of Sanatana Dharma. This thing called unpardonable sin, where you will rot in hell, is a misnomer. Salvation of humankind is the prime supreme duty of the Lord. It's the plan of the divine. It's the biggest plan. So how can there be eternal damnation if that is the plan of the divine? The more the human being turns to God, the purer he or she becomes. Ratnakar, another beautiful story in our mythology. Ratnakar was a plunderer and a highway robber who would, even without any hesitation, mercilessly kill people. One day he was sitting by the roadside waiting for his next target, waiting for his next victim. And it so happened that sage Narada was passing by. And as always, Narada is singing the glories of Narayana and he's playing his veena and walking. Suddenly, Ratnakara pounces in front of him, rushes at him and says, "Give away all your belongings to me. Otherwise, I'm going to smash your head." Sage Narada looks at him and then he smiles instinctively. And he says, "My dear man, I have this veena, I have the rags that I'm wearing. Please take them. But why do you think you want to smash my head for it? Take it. There's no reason for you to smash my head. But if that's what you have to do, take that also." So Ratnakar is stupefied, is astonished, not just by these words, but by the serene face that is smiling at him. Because Ratnakar is more used to people trembling, sweating, fainting. That is what he's used to. People are extremely scared. First of all, they try to run away and he has to grab them. And if he runs back and grabs them, he's a strong man. So very few people can run and get out of his grasp. And then they start trembling. Before he can kill them, they are almost half dead. They faint. That is what he's used to. This is completely in contrast to what he's used to. This man is smiling at me. "Are you not afraid of death?" he asks. "I'm going to kill you and you don't have anything to give me anyway. So you're a useless guy. I'm going to kill you and you're not afraid of death." So Narada says, "What is there to be afraid of? I'm not afraid of death because I don't identify this with this body, mind, and intellect of mine. I don't even think it is mine. There's nothing to be afraid of. If I die, it's okay. I die. Death is part of life." Ratnakara is like, what is this man? First of all, he's smiling at me. Now he's talking something, extremely puzzled. But as much he's puzzled, he's also curious. He wants to know more. So he says, "Please tell me, explain what you're saying." So Narada then starts expounding the glories of the Lord. He starts talking about why one should not identify with body, mind, intellect. Gives him the sermon. Along with that, Narada also always, whenever he, praises the Lord, he, plays the veena. So he notices that Ratnakar is kind of getting very, very absorbed into this sermon that's going on there. Deeply absorbed. The melodious veena and the, words that Narada, which are very strange to him. And seeing the change in Ratnakar, Narada pauses and he says, "Tell me, man, why do you need to do this? Plundering, killing, looting. Why do you need to do all of this?" Ratnakar says, "Sir, you don't know I have a family to safeguard. I feed them, I look after them, and they also take care of me in return. So I have to do that. And for your information, I don't know anything else. What else will I do? This is what I know. I know hunting, and if there is no hunting, I have to rob. And people, when they resist, it's best to get rid of them. This is all I know. I don't know anything else." So Narada says, "So young man, will you and your family, will they also partake of the sins that you're committing? Because as I've just taught you, what you're doing will create sin within you. Will they partake of that sin also?" So Ratnakar says, "I don't know. I'm sure they will." Narada says, "Why don't you ask them? Please ask them and come back and tell me." And Ratnakar is like, "Yeah, sure. The minute I go, you'll run away. Okay, you tie me here, securely, and then you go." So Ratnakar goes home and he asks one by one. So he asks his parents. Parents are absolutely angry. "We didn't even know that you are doing this kind of criminal work. How can you do that? And you have the cheek to come and ask us to partake of your sins. First of all, you shouldn't even be doing this. We never taught you this." Then he goes to his wife. Wife says, "You are doing your duty, my dear husband. You have to protect us. You have to give food for your children. And doing your duty, you may incur sin, how do I take that sin? And because you're doing your duty, you'll incur some merit also. How do I partake of that? I don't think I can partake of that. Then he asks his children. Children are playful mood. So what is Papa saying? I don't know what you're saying. Ratnakar realizes that it's all his karma is only his. Nobody, not even his closest family, can partake of any of that belongs, the deeds that he commits, and the result of the deeds, the fruits, whether they are evil fruit or whether they are good fruits. No one can partake. Rushes back to Narada, falls at his feet. Lord, please teach me. How do I atone for all these sins that I have committed? Narada consoles him and he says, I am teaching you Ramanama. Please keep saying this Ramanama. Keep on chanting the name of Rama. This will help you, Ratnakar. And Ratnakar diligently follows this. Happily, diligently starts doing Ramanama Japa. And that he finds leads to a transformation. He becomes a lot more kinder, lot more better behaved to other human beings. Finds ways and means in his life to earn income without plundering and looting and killing. Humane manner of earning a bread and butter. He finds all that. And over a period of time, he finds that he's getting more and more and more drawn into the Ramanama. Over a period of time, he sits down and does only Ramanama. And what happens is he goes into a deep samadhi. After some time, Sage Narada comes back to check on him. He finds an anthill that's grown completely all around him. Gently wakes him up, removes all the anthill, and he tells Ratnakar, you are indeed blessed. You are now a Brahmarishi. That's the amount that you have reached. That's the state, that's the level that you have reached. And since you were covered by an anthill, which is called Valmika, you will henceforth be known as Valmiki. Please go and spread the goodness in this world. And Sage Valmiki, as we all know, he's celebrated as the harbinger. Sage Vyasa is there, but even before that, Sage Valmiki, harbinger poet in Sanskrit. He is the first author of the Ramayana. So when Sage Narada first taught him Ramanama, Ratnakar could not even recite it. He was in a very asamskrita state. Asamskrita doesn't know Sanskrit language. We are all asamskrita, except Sarika. Right? No, that asamskrita means uncultured. Uncultured. The uncultured person, the evolution of his intellect and mind, all that came to him when he was chanting was Mara, 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 Mara. That's what came to him. And over a period of time, it became Rama, Rama. And that kind of transformation of this asamskrita, uncultured person to the Ananya Bhak, the one who is devoted in a single pointed manner, is one of the most riveting tales of transformation and the absorption of bhakti. It's a beautiful story in our folklore. And how long does this kind of a transformation take? And what is the result of this transformation? That Bhagavan talks about in the next verse. So, Kshipram Bhavati, Bhagavan says, very soon, Kshipram Bhavati, very soon he becomes. It does not take long. Once this attitude is formed, then it does not take long. Dharmatma, very soon, Kshipram Bhavati what? Dharmatma, righteous. And Nigachati, he definitely attains. Nigachati, Nishchayena Gachati, definitely attains, definitely reaches. Shashva Chantim, Shashva Chantim. What helps me in these Sanskrit words is breaking it up. Shashvataha Shantim. Shashvataha, permanent, eternal. Shantim, peace. Shashvat Chantim. The two together become Shashvat Chantim. Beauty of Sanskrit. Shashvat Chantim is like a separate word itself. Shashvataha Chantim, eternal peace, attains eternal peace. All virtues come uninvited when God is there in the mind. from the world of objects that we are all in comes Anitya Shanti. Anitya Shanti is the joys of the world. Anitya, impermanent, transient joys. But here Bhagavan is talking about eternal bliss. From this kind of Ananya Bhak comes Shashvatah Shanti. And Bhagavan says, know this for certain, O Kaunteya. Pratijanihi Kaunteya. Know this for certain. Pratijanihi also implies declaration of the knower. So one is Bhagavan is saying, know it for certain, he's telling. The other is Bhagavan is saying, you already know it, O Kaunteya. Now go and declare to the entire world. You know this so well. Become my ambassador. So Bhagavan appoints Arjuna as his ambassador to go and proclaim to the world that even at any point in time, you develop this aspect of Ananya Bhakti, immediately, without much time, there will be a transformation. Go declare. And who better than Arjuna? Because Arjuna knows, right? What should he declare? But yeah, Arjuna knows, right? What does he know? Arjuna was in a state of destruction in the middle of the battlefield. Complete self-made destruction. He was on the verge of self-destruction. We're really extremely saddened and deep into moha. And he says, I will not fight. I will not perform my duties, even if they kill me. And in that state of destruction, why was he in a state of destruction? In that state, either they would have killed him, the enemy. If they had killed him, he would have perished. History would have known as Arjuna died in the battlefield. He would have perished completely. People wouldn't have even remembered. Who remembers in Mahabharata who all died in the battlefield? Very few people may remember. Right? And if he had lived, if they had spared him, he would have lived only if they had spared him. If they had spared him, then he would have been known as a king who failed to perform his duty. And he would have been destroyed like that. Krishna does not allow either of those to happen. So who better other than Arjuna? And what should Arjuna declare? Name bhakta pranashyati. My devotee shall never perish. So why is someone very wicked like Ratnakara or does harsh actions like that driver who pushed the child, like that motorist? Because there is anxiety in the mind. The mind is disturbed. We saw in the first chapter, no? And in the beginning of the second chapter. The Shoka and the Moha, that is what made Arjuna reach that state of close to self-destruction. This disturbance in the mind, that is what makes people react in a manner that is not conducive to spiritual development, that is not conducive to inculcating bhakti. The Bible says, rejoice in the Lord always, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and petition to the Lord, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And now it's the result of that presenting that request to God in the manner just described. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, peace of God which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds. The Sashvat Chanting, that peace, that will guard. Yogakshema. See how some of these scriptures are beautifully linked in different ways. So Bhagavan says, Name bhakta pranashyati. Devotion is transformative as well as liberating. It transforms and liberates. The glory of devotion is such that even people who are weakened by their nature, by their fundamental intrinsic nature and their traits and their characteristics, are protected by the Lord once that bhakti comes in. And now from among some of the most beautiful verses in the Bhagavad Gita, we now come to among the most misunderstood and also manipulated verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Let's read verse 32.
Mam hi partapyapasritya
Mam hi parthavyapashritya
ye visyupapayonayaha
ye pisyupapayonayaha
striyo vaishyastata shudraha
striyo vaishyasthatha shudraha
te piyanti param gatim.
te piyanti param gatim.
Mam hi partapyapasritya ye visyupapayonayaha striyo vaishyastata shudraha te piyanti param gatim.
Vyapashritya. Vyapashritya, taking refuge in. Mam, me. O Partha. What will happen? Yepi, or actually PA, even those who papayonaha are of sinful birth. Syuhu, maybe, striyaha, feminine, vaishyaha, profit motivated, tatha, also, shudraha, the tamasic, tepi yanti, even they attain paramam gatim, the supreme goal. So taking refuge in me, O Partha, even those of sinful birth, who may be feminine, who may be profit motivated, who may be also tamasic, even they certainly attain the supreme goal. Let us now see how this verse has been misunderstood and also been manipulated actually to suit, selfish or even vile goals of some people. So papayonaha of sinful birth. This has been used to actually condemn people as born sinners. No one is a born sinner. A lot of times we find, in the very vile of circumstances where people use such spiritual text to make religious statements and, other, well, you are born sinful, you are a born sinner. No one is a born sinner. That is why it's very important to understand the implication of what Bhagavan is saying. Or what Bhagavan is saying in words also. Yonaha comes from the source, comes from yoni or the source of birth. Papa, we have seen multiple times, is nothing but mental disturbance. Papa or sin is mental disturbance. Sin is nothing but that disturbed mind. And that disturbed mind, once the mind dies, then the body-mind intellect goes, that accumulates at karma and comes back. That mental disturbance is sin. Thus, a papayonaha is one who is prone to mental disturbance from birth. And this is why is a person prone to mental disturbance from birth? Because of the sanchita karma, prarabdha karma that the person has come with, is born with. So that is the real meaning. It doesn't mean that people are born sinners. No. It means that people have this handicap, let us say. Some people are born without an arm, handicap. Some people are born with a disturbed mind, handicap. So it's nothing but a handicap. It's not, no one is a born sinner. Like you are born a criminal. No one is born criminal. And Bhagavan gives 3 examples of such people. We have already seen in chapter 4, Bhagavan says, and this is very crucial to understand, Chatur Varnyam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. I made this Chatur Varnyam. The fourfold textures, the fourfold Chatur, fourfold Varnyam, colors or textures that make up the mind intellect of people. That caste, it is known as caste, the color, it essentially means color or texture, that make up the minds of people. That I only created, were created by me. How? By the differentiation of the guna karma of that person. Whatever guna karma vibaha, this is the most important. In order to understand even this verse properly, we must note this and keep in mind that Bhagavan never discriminates between aspects of his creation, elements of his creation. No caste, no creed, no sex, no color, no nationality, and so on and so forth. No discrimination in these aspects. Discrimination in Bhagavan's language only means viveka. The ability to discriminate between the permanent and the impermanent. That is it. No other discrimination. Everything else is equal. So his focus, whenever he presents these kinds of aspects pertaining to society and the evolution of society, are fully on guna and karma. And the three examples based on guna karma and the nature of the person, of the mind, that Bhagavan gives are these. Number one, striyaha. Striyaha. Striyaha means the feminine. People whose emotions cloud clarity of thought, whose clarity of thoughts are clouded by emotion. This has been interpreted as female, by the way. It is not female. Anyone, any human being who has an emotion that clouds clarity of thought, irrespective of sex. Whoever allows emotion to cloud the mind intellect is a Stri. Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda once famously said, in the entire cabinet of Indira Gandhi, there is only one male, and that male is Indira Gandhi. Others were all allowing their emotion to cloud mind. Today also we'll see. You see politics today or any other field. People who allow mind intellect to get clouded, emotion to overcome logical action, are feminine in nature. Vaishyaha is the second example he gives. Those people who are motivated by profit alone, without any dedication to a higher cause. For profit, they will do anything. By nature, they want only profit. What is the consequence? What is the result? What else is sacrifice? Nothing matters. By nature, extremely by nature, hooked to profit. Vaishyaha. And he says Shudra, the third type of people, the tamasic people, people who are by nature dull and lazy. People who don't, we struggle here in the tea garden also, I struggle. It's very difficult to get people to come and work. They just don't, they are better sit at home, do nothing. Literally do nothing. Young, strong people, by the way. I would rather spend time at home doing nothing. Dull, lazy, without any zeal for action or work. So the reference here is to the texture of the mind, to the temperament of the person, not on a person or a human being or any kind of classification of a human being based on anything else other than guna and karma. So guna and karma can only influence texture of the mind. Guna and karma does not influence birth, does not influence sex, does not influence nationality, nothing, none of that. Guna and karma only influences texture of the mind. So that temperament, based on that, many of us are Shudras, most of us are Vaishyas, and all of us are Stri. So anytime we hear any other to the contrary, we must remember this. So if bhakti can do so much for the evil, earlier Bhagavan had talked about the evil, the people who are purebred evil. And then he talked about the people who are temperamental because of the guna karma combination, the permutation combination of their guna karma. If bhakti can do so much for them, what about those who by nature are devoted? That Bhagavan talks about in the next verse.
Kim punar brahmana punyaha
Kim punar brahmana punyaha
bhakta rajarshayasthatha
bhakta rajarshayasthatha
anityamasukam lokam
anityamasukham lokam
imam prapya bhajasvamam.
imam prapya bhajasvamam.
Kim punar brahmana punyaha bhakta rajarshayasthatha अनित्यमसुखं लोकम् इमं प्राप्य भजस्व माम्.
Kim punar, kim punaha, how much more punya, holy, brahmanaha, one who is naturally devoted, bhakta, who is devoted. Rajarsha, tatha is tatha and the naturally devoted brahmana and the Rajarsha bhakta, the royal saints who are devoted. So he is referring to these two people, the royal saints, the devoted royal saints, and the naturally devoted people. Imam, this, prapya, having obtained this what? Anityama sukham lokam. Anityama, impermanent, temporary, transient. Anityam, not anityama, anityam. Asukham, asukham, unhappy. Impermanent, transient, unhappy, lokam, world. Anityama sukham lokam is impermanent, transient, unhappy world. Having attained this impermanent, transient, unhappy world, bhajasva mam, worship me. So Bhagavan is saying, how much more then these holy brahmanas who are naturally devoted by nature, and the devoted royal saints, having come to this transient, unhappy world, do worship me. They worship me a lot more. Such people, knowing fully well that this world, this samsara, is impermanent by nature, naturally creates unhappiness for all of us who are dwelling in it, they then become naturally devoted to Bhagavan. And they are fully focused in worshipping Bhagavan. But then what for people like us who are neither here nor there, who don't know, we don't even know which category we belong to. Are we evil? Are we temperamental? Are we naturally devoted? We don't know which category we fall into. How do these people, how do an ordinary human being, Bhagavan, just an ordinary person who's living here in this world, how do we worship you, my Lord, when we are facing the day-to-day battles while we are doing all of that? That Bhagavan touches upon in the last verse of this chapter.
Manmana bhava madbhaktaha.
Manmana bhava madbhaktaha.
Madhyaji mam namaskuru.
Madhyaji mam namaskuru.
Mame vaishyasi yuktvaivam.
Mame vaishyasi yuktvaivam.
Atmanam matparayanaha.
Atmanam matparayanaha.
Manmana bhava madbhaktaha. Madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mame vaishyasi yuktvaivam. Atmanam matparayanaha.
Manmana, with mind fixed on me. Bhava, you being. Bhava, the existence. Madbhaktaha, devoted to me. Madhyaji, worshipping me, making sacrifices to me. Madhyaji mam. Namaskuru, bowing down to me. Mame vaishyasi, to me alone you shall come. Yuktvaivam, being steadfast. Thus being steadfast, to me alone you will come. Actually, Yuktvaivam comes first in reading. Yuktvaivam, thus being steadfast, to me alone you shall come. And even before that, what have you done? Atmanam matparayanaha. You have taken your entire self. With your entire self, you have taken me as the supreme goal. So with your entire self, having taken me as the supreme goal, being steadfast in this manner, yuktvaivam, to me alone you shall come. Mame vaishyasi. So with your mind fixed on me, with your mind with being devoted to me, sacrificing to me, worshipping me, bowing down to me, the entire self taking me as the supreme goal. and in this manner, being steadfast, you shall come to me alone. So it is common for ordinary people like us, where the mind is somewhere and the heart is somewhere else. We don't know. We are confused at times. With my mind, I'll take this decision. With my heart, this is what I will do. How many times we find this in our life? Mind somewhere else, heart somewhere else. Bhagavan is asking for all faculties to become united, to steadfastly focus on him. Mat chitta mat paraha. Fully focused mind with respect, fully focused heart with love. With that love and respect, bringing in that devotion in a single pointed manner. So bringing the head and the heart together, the mind, intellect together, let us worship Bhagavan and we shall attain him. With this, we come to the end of this beautiful chapter. This chapter sits bang in the middle of Bhagavad Gita. And it assures us that whatever be our nature, whenever we start on the spiritual path in our lives, through bhakti, with bhakti, we can attain Bhagavan. Hari Om. Thank you.
We'll repeat the verses 26 to 34 of chapter 9. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyuprahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha yat karoshi yadashnasi yajuhoshi dadasi yat tapashyasi kaunteya tat kurushvamadarpanam shubha shubha phalairevam मोक्ष्यसे कर्म बंधनैः संन्यास योग युक्तात्मा विमुक्तो मामुपश्यसि समोहं सर्वभूतेषु न मे द्वेषोऽस्ति न प्रियः ये भजन्ति तु मां भक्त्या मयि ते तेषु चाप्यहम् अपि चेतु सुदुराचारः भजते माम् अनन्यभाक् साधुरेव समन्तव्यः सम्यग् व्यवसितो हि सः क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा शश्वच्छान्तिं विगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि न मे भक्तः प्रणश्यति मां हि पार्था व्यपाश्रित्य येऽपि स्युः पापयोनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यास्तथा शूद्राः तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम् किं पुनर्ब्राह्मणा पुण्याः भक्ता राजर्षयस्तथा अनित्यमसुखं लोकम् इमं प्राप्य भजस्व माम् मन्मना भव मद्भक्तः मद्याजी मां नमस्कुरु मामे वैश्यसि युक्त्वैवम् आत्मानं मत्परायणः ॐ तत्सदिति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुन संवादे राजविद्या राजगुह्य योगो नाम नवमोऽध्यायः.
So before we do this, sadhana, our learnings and practice. For each chapter, we have picked one aspect that we should focus on and try to imbibe that and practice that. That is very important. Chapter 1, we must watch for shoka and moha in our lives and remove them immediately. Remove them at the grass root. Chapter 2, samatvam yoga uchyate. Maintain equipoise in extremities. There will be extremities, be equipoised in those extremities. Chapter 3, samachara. Perform actions with utmost devotion, utmost dedication, and resulting in perfection. Perform actions with perfection. Samachara. Chapter 4, karmanya karmanya paschet. Not being the doer while doing. How do we do that? By seeing inaction in action. Practice this. Chapter 5, Padma Patram Ivam Bhasa. Just like a lotus petal is untouched by water that it is surrounded by, be untouched by worldly experiences while in contact with the worldly experiences. Chapter 6, Mam Pashyati Sarvatraha Sarvamcha Mai Pashyati. Sees me everywhere and sees everything in me. We must see Bhagavan everywhere and see everything in Bhagavan. All that is actually coming. It will be beautiful. Chapter 7, Natvaham Teshu Te Mai. Indeed, I am not in them. They are in me. Let's maintain awareness of this. The pure consciousness untouched in the midst of all the varied existence, all the varied thoughts. And chapter 7, the second one, we had two aspects to focus on. Mai Sarvamidam Proktam Sutre Maniganaiva. All the variety is strung in me, just like gems on a string. Chapter 8, Sarveshu Kaleshu Mamanusmara Yudhyacha. Sarveshu Kaleshu, at all times, in every moment of your lives. Mamanusmara, remember me. And Yudhyacha, perform your duties. And now chapter 9, Yat Karoshi Tat Kurushva Madarpanam. Whatever you do, that you do as an offering to me. Thank you. Om Purvadat.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityodma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi
Om. Hari Om. Thank you.
We'll also do the Gita
Yes,
Arati.
Bhagavad Gita Arati.
Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita Maya Jaya Bhagavad Gita Harihi Kamala Harini Harihi Kamala Harini Sundara Sapani. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita Karma Samarma Pashashini Kama Sattihara Maya Kama Sattihara Tattva Jnana Vikashini Tattva Jnana Vikashini Vidya Brahmapara. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita Nishchala Bhakti Vidayini Nirmalahari Maya Nirmalahari Sharanadayini Sharanadayini Sabvidhi Sukari. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita Ragadvesha Vidarini Karini Sada Maya Karini Sada Bhava Bhaya Harini Bhava Bhaya Harini Paramananda Prada. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita Asura Bhava Vinashini Nashini Shamarajani Maya Nashini Shamarajani Devi Sadgunaayini Devi Sadgunaayini Hari Rasika Sajani. Om Jaya Bhagavad Gita Samata Tyag Sikavani Hari Mukti Bani Maya Hari Mukti Bani सकल शास्त्र स्वामिनी सकल शास्त्र स्वामिनी श्रुतियों की रानी ओम जय भगवद गीते दया सुधा भरसाविनी मातु कृपा की जय मैया मातु कृपा की जय हरिपद दान कर अपनो कर लीजय ओम जय भगवद गीते ओम जय भगवद गीते मैया जय भगवद गीते हरि कमल विहारिणी हरि कमल विहारिणी सुंदर सुपुनीते ओम जय भगवद गीते ओम जय भगवद गीते ओम जय भगवद गीते.
Thank you, Hari Om. So we finished chapter 9, like I said, middle of Bhagavad Gita. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Sir, this Striyo Vaishyas Tatha Shudra. So he said anyone who is emotional is considered a weak person according to God. Emotion is considered a sin.
No. Whoever allows emotions to cloud the logical action, where emotion becomes so deep that it clouds logical
Thinking. Okay. Thank you.
Emotion by itself is nothing wrong with it. But if emotion is clouding,
overpowering the mind, then
Bhagavan says that it's a temperament that prevents us from, see, ultimately what does Bhagavan says that when the mind becomes pure, how does the mind become pure? By removing the impurities. But if emotion is so strong that it clouds the logic that will remove impurities, then it's a temperament that comes in the way. That is what it means. And Bhagavan is only pointing out three aspects which are very predominant, which are among the biggest aspects that actually prevent us from, getting to a state where the mind is much calmer. Emotions create turmoil in the mind. So those kind of emotions which create turmoil in the mind. Yeah.
I have a question. Maybe.
Yeah. I was going to say Upasna, but your voice is very low.
Is it better? I need to be louder, probably.
Yes, this is good.
Okay, this might not be related, but I'm not sure if this is the correct forum also. But since you told the story of Ratnakar, so related to that, so according to that story, your papas are your papas and your punyas are your punyas only. But in Hindu dharma, when during the marriage vows, if you recall, it's like it's one of the vows that I'm going to be taking half the punyas and half the, papas of the better half for each other. We are going to share. So it's contradicting somewhere, and Hindu marriages are, like according to Gita is also as per Hindu Dharam, and that is also Hindu Dharam. So how do you justify that?
I mean, I'll say I won't justify that. If you ask me, I will go by Bhagavad Gita. I don't know who wrote the Hindu marriage vows, but I know that Sage Vyasa wrote the Bhagavad Gita. and Bhagavad Gita was recited by Sri Krishna. But the Hindu marriage vows, they probably, the intent is what we should look at. Absolutely, practically, in reality, no other soul can take the papa punya of any other soul. That's not, it cannot happen. It does not work. We say, no, hum akele aaye the, akele jayenge. That's the truth. That's the reality. The
But
Hindu
then-
marriage,
May I add?
let me just finish this point. The intent of the Hindu marriage was, if we take a look at it, if we look at it from the intent perspective, maybe the idea is that if you have that thought of being able to share the punya and papa, you will be more united as a couple. Maybe that is the reason. But if you want to say which is the one you take, yeah, I would rather go by the Bhagavad Gita, what it says. Bhagavan clearly says that explicitly.
So
Only
when we
50% of the good deeds. Only 50% of the good deeds, not the bad deeds. That is one. Secondly, 50% of the कष्टाज. मैं तुम्हारे साथ कष्ट भोगूंगी, लेकिन तुम किसी का गलत काम करके, किसी का गला काट के कुछ कहते हो, उसके लिए मैं जिम्मेवार नहीं हूँ. वो क्लियर है आपकी वेडिंग वाउज में. तो मिस कोट मत करो प्लीज.
okay then okay yeah, but then probably it was quoted like that, but I consider it as a wife. I would consider that not only his good deeds, but I'm a bhagidar of his bad things also.
No.
Okay, you can say
No.
whatever, let's not.
No, you can see, you will go through the wedding vows. It is not there.
No, I'm sure what you're quoting is right, but I'm saying in my thoughts. I mean, I'm taking it like that.
So that is why
Secondly-
this satsanga is for clearing the thoughts. So you may go back and clear your thoughts.
Okay, another thing is
So
that
two
when you
points.
say
Upasana, two things. One is, see, you may think like that in your mind, which is good, which is great if you do. And, but also be aware that in reality, the point is this: being aware of the reality helps you know what is going to be. But having this attitude will help you lead a better life on a day-to-day basis, maybe. So, yeah, maybe you'll be the Kalyug ki Sati Savitri. Pranam.
no, and another point is like you pray for someone, you want good things for someone else, then how are you able to pray for somebody else that something good happens to the other person? You ask for God's blessings for somebody else, then there also I think then there is a contradiction.
No, why? There is no contradiction, no. If you're in a position to ask something good for someone else, that means your mind is already in a reasonably pure and calm state, which enables you to ask something good for someone else. If your mind was in an extremely disturbed state, then it would not. And possibly one step to go to an entire, Ananya Bhak state, to go to that Ananya Bhak state, one of the stepping stones is to have somebody else, a human being, to whom you are completely devoted. So if you are fortunate enough to be completely devoted to a human being, that makes it easier for you to be completely devoted to Bhagavan.
Okay, then another thing is that
So it's like saying that हमने रणजी ट्रॉफी खेला है तो टेस्ट मैच खेलने में थोड़ा आसानी है.
Okay, so another thing is that in Gurbani also it is like आप भगवान का नाम लोगे when you are आप उनका सिमरन करोगे तो then that is the only thing that you will take with you when you leave this body. That is the only thing. But then it is also said that towards the end or whenever you get to hear about God, like you are telling us about Gita Gyan, what you're giving, that is also that I'm not earning it. It is only the person जो जप रहा है उसी को उसका प्रसाद मिलेगा. So where does it am I getting the fruit? I'm just a question. Huh? I'm not saying that I'm asking for prasada, but am I getting the fruit when somebody else recites the name of God, or it is only me when I recite the name of God as the fruit I'm going to get?
So you please be a little bit patient at the end of Bhagavad Gita. Once we are halfway now, another halfway to go. In the end, Bhagavan will list out the benefits of saying, the benefits of hearing, the benefits of studying, all of that he will do in the end. So everybody benefits. Everyone benefits. Even if you listen, you benefit.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, Sharma sir.
Sir, in my humble view, in 4 words, we can sum up the essence. 4 words are confession, as you narrated of Valmiki story. Valmiki confessed. Confession, penance, remorse, and devotion. By these 4 words or by these 4 steps, confession, remorse, penance, and devotion, we can remove the internal difficulties of our life and get some internal peaceful bliss in the mind. And devotion, to my mind, is like digestion. If I have got a bad digestion, the other person who can help me is only the doctor. And my taking those medicines, those doses as prescribed. If my digestion is bad, if my devotion is not concentrated, one-minded, single-minded, then I will not get the result. And for getting devotion, I have to have remorse. I have to have penance. I have to have some austerities, some good deeds. And for that, the first step is confession. In these 4 words, I suppose you're up till now what you have explained. That's my humble submission.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Every time you give us some golden words, I really love it.
No, sir, I have no gold.
Please do.
The wisdom is given by you when you recite and when we receive it sincerely, earnestly, and with a candid mind.
Any other thought? If no other thoughts or comments, then we'll say Hari Om, and next week we start chapter 10. Looking forward to that. Hari Om. Thank you.